Hi everybody and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm Dan Illman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up in this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Daily Racing Form handicappers Matt Bernier, Mike Beer, and I will handicap 3 graded stakes races on Saturday, 2 for 3-year-olds on the turf. The Grade 2 Penn Mile Stakes, your Saturday DRF bets race of the day, the Grade 3 Pennine Ridge Stakes from Belmont Park, and the Grade 1 Beholder Mile from Santa Anita featuring champion Unique Bella against some tough competition. Nicole Russo's got a pedigree pick, Peter Thomas Fornatel's got his tournament talk, JK Jonathan Kinchin's play of the day focuses on a multiple race wager at Penn National, and David Aragona's Time Form U.S. Spotlight, the Pennine Ridge at Belmont. Plus horses to watch, best bets, and lots more. So let's break Out of the Gate. We begin Out of the Gate with our Horse Watch segment. Mike Beer, Naira analyst, you've got something at Belmont, a rarity. Chad Brown at a price?
Yeah, you don't see it too often. It usually only happens when Chad's got more than one in the race, and that's what was the case last week at Belmont Park, the 25th. The final race on the card of the 25th, Chad ran 2. He had the 4-5 favorite Frontier Market. He also had the first-time starter admissions office by point of entry. This horse has a lot of pedigree on the dam side, a half-brother to Coffee Click, a Grade 1 winner on the turf. This horse was a little green early. He broke last in this field. He was running in spots at the back of the field the entire way. Jose Ortiz took him out to the clear in the stretch, though. This horse started to find himself late in this race, and he really comes with a good finish at the end. He's going to run right by his stablemate at the end. He's going to get up to win this, and he's doing it under strong handling, too. You can see Jose Ortiz not really getting all in and all over this horse. He still gets up to win. It's a pretty impressive first-time starter.
Yet another 1-2 finish for Chad Brown. What a surprise in New York, especially on the turf. Let's go back to Preakness weekend at Pimlico. There were very few turf races run because of the extremely wet conditions. Ultra Brat ran, though, however, in the Grade 3 Gallaret on the turf, and she just loved and relished the going. Let's take a look at that race right now. She's turning into the stretch in complete control, and she's going to draw away to win by 10 lengths with a 100 buyer speed figure. Now let's be reasonable. This really isn't going to be Ultra Brat's week-to-week performance. She just loved this surface. But this is the kind of mare that's extremely underrated and can be a nice Grade 3 type for Graham Motion all summer long. I just hope they don't get too ambitious off of this race. Remember that she won the Marshuas River with a 96 buyer speed figure earlier this year, backed it up with a good third in the Swanee River with a 96 buyer speed figure. She is capable of running buyers in the mid to high 90s, and on a wet track, obviously, capable of running better. I think she's a mare that can be overlooked in graded stakes races down the road, especially as we get to Saratoga, and she's one to watch in the Grade 2 and Grade 3 races later this summer. That's Ultra Brat for Graham Motion. Our colleague Matt Bernier's got a horse watch from Santa Anita, and then Mike and I will come back and take a look at the DRF Bet Saturday race of the day, the Penn Mile.
My Horse Watch segment, we're going to go back and take a look at Marleys Freedom's victory last weekend in the Desert Stormer. This was her first start out going for Bob Baffert. She was already a very accomplished filly while she was in the Bob Hess Jr. barn, but boy, Baffert gets a hold of her, and bang, she pops a 105 buyer speed figure. I understand she had a lot of things go her way in this spot. There was a big pace duel signed up in front of her. Drayden Van Dyke basically just kept her in the clear, looped the field, and drew off for fun. But to me, this could be the sign of bigger and better things to come from Marleys Freedom. That race was at 3/4 of a mile, and there's a part of me that thinks she's actually better going 7/8 or maybe even longer, so perhaps she's someone to keep an eye on. Everybody thought that Sulcourt was just the standout in that division in Southern California and maybe even the country. Perhaps Marleys Freedom's throwing her hat into the ring for the filly and mare sprinters.
Let's take a look at the field for Saturday's DRF Bets Race of the Day, the Grade 2 $500,000 Penn Mile Stakes. Race number 9 at Penn National for 3-year-olds, obviously going a mile. For expanded stakes previews, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. We cover all the graded stakes races this weekend, plus Matt Bernier has got a special Pick 4 preview from Penn National. Mike, Todd Pletcher, John Velasquez, they've got the morning line favorite in here with the number 3 Maraud. A nice winner at Gulfstream over the winner. Let's go back to that race. He had shown good tactical speed in this spot. He's going to grind down the pace setter in the Palm Beach Stakes. Since then, he's come back to win a major race over Kentucky Derby weekend, but boy, wasn't he helped by circumstance and surface that day?
No, his win at Churchill was a good effort, but yeah, you're right. He had some things go his way in that spot. He ran well in this race, too. This was a really smart ride by Johnny V to put him up close to the horse to beat Speed Franco. He got him at the end, and then he came back and he did win on Derby weekend. Really soft turf course. He was kept wide throughout the race. I think that's where he wanted to be that day. And he also caught a really big pace to close into. The pace fell apart at the end. This horse got up at the end. It was a nice performance for him. I have no problem with him in this race. I think he is one of the major contenders in here. I don't know that I would be wanting to bet him as the favorite if he is indeed the favorite, but he can win.
That's the point that I would make. He's adaptable. It's nice that he can handle a little bit of cut in the ground, but I'm not sure he has such an edge over this field that I would want to take him either as the favorite or as a relatively short price. Now, you've got a horse with a tremendous amount of upside in here. Let's talk a little bit about Hawkish. So impressive last time out when he got a trip, and arguably best 2 starts back, although he finished 4th.
Yeah, he was in that replay that we just showed where Murad was able to get up. That was Hawkish, who made a big run on the outside there. He flattened out at the end of that race, but it was one of those performances that made you think this horse might be okay. It was just a second career start. He came back out of that race and he did this. They took him up to New York. They went back to their available condition with him, and he just had a perfect trip in behind Morrison, who cut out the pace here. I mean, Dan, he just runs this horse right over in the stretch, and then he just stretches out at the end of this race. Look at him finish this race off. This was a really nice performance. Morrison came back to win his very next start. Hawkish, boy, I don't know. He looks like he has an awful lot of ability. I like him in this race.
This is a big, good-looking, well-bred horse trained by a master in Jimmy Toner. And what I like best about that race, and you saw that spectacular finish, was that he showed the ability to stay close. He is now a little bit more mature and a little bit more adaptable to the pace situation, which could be key on Saturday. I'm going to go with the number 4, Therapist, and this is a horse that just knows where the finish line is. 4 for 5 lifetime, and the only loss came in the seasonal debut off a layoff in the Palm Beach, a race which we saw. What we didn't see, though, was that Therapist threw a fit in the gate, unseated the jock before the race, and I wonder if that took some of the starch out of him. In his subsequent start, the Cutler Bay Stakes, Therapist looks like he's in trouble as we swing into the stretch. He's been under a ride for a while, he's widest, and he's got Speed Franco, a decent enough horse that he has to run down in the last 16th. And he is going to come, though, with a determined, solid run. Therapist is going to be stepping up in class in the Penn Mile, facing horses tougher than he's ever faced before. But I like the determination he showed in this race to go get that quality horse in Speed Franco. Like Hawkish, he has shown some tactical speed in the past. Christophe Clement won this race, I believe, last year with Frostmourne. Therapist, my top selection in the Penn Mile. Nicole Russo's got her pedigree pick segment focusing on the breeding industry, and Peter Thomas Fornatel will give you all the latest news and notes in the world of tournaments. Let's go to those segments right now.
Hey everyone, Nicole Russo coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky for Out of the Gate. We'll continue to talk here about handicapping the progeny of some of this year's freshman sires, a deep group of stallions, and one of the most accomplished among those was the regally bred Will Take Charge. He, of course, emerged in the second half of his 3-year-old year with performances at the major level, including this victory in the Travers Stakes, a close placing in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and later a victory over older horses in the Clark Handicap to secure the 3-year-old Eclipse. Now, based on his own racing profile, you'd expect Will Take Charge's foals to be later developing horses, and there have definitely been hints that that's how the bloodstock community is evaluating his foals. He sired big, strong weanlings and yearlings who were really in his image, and he was one of the commercial standouts of his group. Again, a deep group of first-year sires at that point. His first offspring selling very well, and a lot of them purchased by end users in sale parlance. That is, people who intend to race the horse themselves, to maybe put the horse into their own breeding program eventually, people who will give the horse the time to develop. Not a ton of pin hookers in on them early, and his juvenile sale results were solid, but maybe not as much of a breakout story as his yearling sale results. In the juvenile market, of course, you're looking for a precocious horse who is perhaps going to reward your investment quickly, and I don't think that's what these are. So definitely keep that in mind as you're evaluating these horses. I think they'll get better as they develop and as we get into the season. That being said, the stallion is only half of the equation. You can certainly add precocity to a horse via the female family, and that's perhaps what we've seen running with Will Take Charge's first winner from his 3 starters to date, Tajori. We should certainly talk about her here, as she hinted at the quality her sire can throw, turned in this smashing debut performance at Santa Anita to put her sire in the win column. She earned a Beyer speed figure of 82, the highest of the admittedly young 2-year-old season to date, the first juvenile, though, to break that threshold figure of 80. Tajori expected to make her stakes debut in next week's Astoria, one of 2 juvenile stakes at the Belmont Racing Festival, the other, of course, being the Tremont. We'll definitely bring you more on those races next week for DRF TV, looking for pedigree clues, especially with the first-year stallions there, along with, of course, pedigree clues for the 1.5-mile Belmont Stakes. We'll have you covered wall-to-wall next week on Out of the Gate.
Peter Thomas Fornatale back with you on Out of the Gate, talking about some frequently asked questions for tournaments today. This will be for newer players, people thinking about trying tournaments out. Might want to listen in closely while I define some common terms that we use on DRF tournaments and throughout the tournament universe. This is the difference between feeders and qualifiers and round 1 contests. Basically, a qualifier is a contest where you win directly into a big event like the upcoming Saratoga Betting Challenge. A feeder event is essentially a qualifier for a qualifier. You'll put up less money in a feeder than a qualifier, but you have to go through the extra step. Feeders on the DRF tournament site some weeks start as low as $7, a lot of $11 feeders. You can get in for a very low price point. Now, sometimes the price points are such that there are 2 stages of feeders, the basic feeder, which I just described, and then a round 1 contest. You can also enter directly into a round 1 contest. One common example of a round 1 is like the games we have for the World Championship of Handicapping, where you put up $95 for the round 1 and can win your way directly into the so-called grade 1 qualifier that will eventually put you in to the championship level event. So that's basically it. There are feeders. Sometimes you'll feed into a round 1, which is like a bigger feeder, and then there are the qualifiers. The qualifiers are the games where you win into the big tournaments, and you can buy in at any level depending on how much action you're looking for, depending on how much risk tolerance you have, etc. This weekend on DRF Tournaments, a couple of important round 1 games happening on Saturday with a chance to start your journey to the Del Mar contest, the big Del Mar summer event that is for many one of the centerpieces of the summer contest season. Also, round 1 for the aforementioned World Championship of Handicapping. Check those out. There's a full list of games happening at tournaments.drf.com. If you have further questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on Twitter, as it says right there on your screen, @LoomsBoldly. You can also reach out to me via the DRF Players podcast, which I'm proud to be a part of twice a week. You can ask questions there, podcast@drf.com, and me and the guy with the big hair will go over some stuff and hopefully give you your answers, whether it pertains to tournaments or the racing world in general. That's all I have for this week. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. Stay tuned for more on Out of the Gate.
DRF Bets is your home for online horse racing and wagering. Bet from any device with data, analysis, videos, and intuitive wagering all weaved together. It's everything you need to win, plus a $100 deposit match bonus. DRF Bets, the only way to play. Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's take a look at the field for the Grade 1 Beholder Mile at Santa Anita on Saturday, featuring Champion Unique Bella, 3 to 5 on the morning line. She's the number 6, ridden by Mike Smith, trained by Jerry Hollendorfer. You've got multiple Grade 1 stakes winner Paradise Woods, the number 4 at 2 to 1, and you've got a millionaire Vale Dory, the number 5 at 4 to 1. For expanded stakes previews of all the graded stakes races this weekend, including the Beholder Mile, where we talk about every horse and every every graded stakes race in great detail, head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Mike, Unique Bella is the deserving favorite in this race, but we know that when Paradise Woods is right, she can make Unique Bella work, as we see in the La Brea Stakes 2 starts back going 7 furlongs.
Yeah, she ran well in this race. She sort of went first through the turn here to take this race over, which I think was the right thing to do. And you can see her as they turn into the stretch, she's got the advantage on Unique Bella in this race, and she's doing her very best here today. She just can't get away from that horse. Unique Bella is just going to stay on a little bit better at the end here and close her down. Paradise Woods has a lot of natural ability. The real problem with her, at least at this stage of her career, is she doesn't always show up with her best race, and she cannot afford to show with anything less than her best race on Saturday against this field.
The problem is she's been ouchy. She came out of that race, she showed up again, and she got beat by a couple of really nice fillies in Selcourt and Marleys Freedom, but she came out of that race with a lot of feet problems, and I wonder, how is she going to be ridden in this race? Would you send her to the front? Her last 2 big wins, her grade 1 wins, came in gate-to-wire fashion. We also know that's Unique Bella's game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what choice they really have. I mean, if you're going to show up in a race like this against 2 real quality horses and 2 quality horses who also have some speed, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to concede the race to those 2? I would just send her to the front in this race, try and wire this field, see if she can do it.
Well, let's talk about Unique Bella, who shipped out of Southern California for the first time in the Apple Blossom, most recently at Oaklawn. And as we see from the start of this race, it was an unmitigated disaster. Unique Bella is a speed horse. She breaks slowly, is forced to rush up to contest the pace, and all things considering, she ran really well.
Yeah, she did run really well in this race. This is the real problem with her, though, just because the kind of horse she is when she breaks like that. When you watch her race, it's almost like Mike Smith doesn't have any real say in the matter about what she's going to do, because you can't get her to really settle from off the pace, and she would not settle in this race. She was wide. She just pulled her way up to the front. She gets tired at the end, I think justifiably so. It was a race she was supposed to win, but with the bad start, I guess she has a big excuse. I think she's going to bounce back with a better race on Saturday.
I thought she was very game to finish second behind Streamline. As we take a look at our picks for this race, we'll discuss, do you think Unique Bella can rate just a little bit? And that's going to be key if Paradise Woods goes. You mentioned that she's hard to settle. Yeah. If she doesn't settle, if she battles Paradise Woods, does it set it up for Vale d'Or?
It's certainly possible that could happen. I'm going to take the position that Unique Bella, assuming she gets out of the gate, I think she will sit right up on the pace, but on the outside of a horse like Paradise Woods in this race. And I think at the end of the day, she just might be a little bit better. But again, she's a horse who, she can't afford to make too many mistakes in the field, because this is a good field.
I agree. It's a really good field, a short field, but a good field. I'm going to go with Unique Bella as well. I think she breaks in here. I think the outside post is going to be very helpful, because she can play off of what Paradise Woods is doing. If Paradise Woods goes, maybe she can sit second in hound mode at attack on the turn. If Paradise Woods decides not to go, Unique Bella will find a very comfortable spot on the lead. That was where she was 2 back when she earned a 109 by her speed figure. Be nice to see champion Unique Bella get back to the winner's circle, but she's going to have to earn it on Saturday. Our colleague Matt Bernier has thoughts on 3 of the major graded stakes races this weekend. Let's get to his segment right now.
Couple of stakes on turf for 3-year-olds, as well as a grade 1 for older fillies and mares out on the West Coast. Let's start off with one of the turf races, the Penn Mile at Penn National. The marquee event of the entire Penn National meeting, 3-year-olds a mile on the grass. You can go so many ways. This is a very, very wide open event, whether it's Maraud, whether it's Therapist, whether it's Hawkish. They all have legitimate credentials and reasons why you can go that direction, and they're probably the 3 most likely winners of the race. I'm going to take a little bit of a stab with the number 7 in here, Smart Remark, going out for Vicky Oliver. I was very, very pleased to see that they scratched out of a race on Thursday night at Churchill Downs to show up in this spot on Saturday night. Now, we'll find out if he can handle the hiking class, but I have to be honest with you. To me, he's the kind of horse that his 2 turf races, they're better than a lot of people are giving them credit for. His career debut at Indiana Grand, I thought that was a really, really strong effort from him. And then when he came back off of a long layoff in his first start as a 3-year-old in the Columbia down at Tampa, I thought that was a tremendous effort as well. I liked him that day, and I thought it was a little bit of a premature move. You can look through the Timeform US pace ratings, all color-coded red. He moved into the middle of the teeth of that pace, and I kind of feel like it was a little bit on the premature side. Turning for home, he loomed, but unfortunately, he just flattened out down the lane, finished a decent 3rd. I think he's a really talented horse, and again, with the presence of those other 3 or 4 horses in here, he can't help but be a good price. And I really do believe he might not be the most likely winner. He's not as likely a winner as Maraud or Therapist or even Hawkish, who is so lightly raced and looks like the sky is the limit. But I feel like Smart Remark, he's run well on dirt, he's run well on turf, and he could get a decent enough setup in here. And it's also a positive that they feel confident enough to send him up here to a spot like this. Take a shot with Smart Remark there. Let's go on out to the West Coast, the Beholder Mile. It's a Grade 1 event, and really there are two names that most people are going to key in on. You have Unique Bella, you have Paradise Woods. Anybody that's paid attention to any of these stakes previews that we've done or out of the gate in the past knows that I am probably the #1 fanboy of Paradise Woods. Now, the concern I have is she's probably not naturally as talented as Unique Bella, but there's a scenario, and I hope this happens. I don't know that it will, but I hope it happens. I hope Flavian Pratt and company have a plan set to be aggressive. Send Paradise Woods immediately once the gates break, because you go back and look at her best races on her page in her career. The Zenyatta last year and the Santa Anita Oaks. Common denominator, she's out there loving life on the front end, freewheeling it. She can still go fast and stay out the distance. A mile is well within her range. I just need them to be aggressive and look at Unique Bella and say, Mike Smith, you make a decision. We're going to be the ones dictating things. Send out of there, be aggressive, make Unique Bella make a decision, because we know, we've seen her, she's a little bit quirky herself. So I'll take a shot here with Paradise Woods as the second choice in the Beholder Mile. And then the main event at Belmont Park on Saturday. It's the local prep for the Belmont Derby. 3-year-olds going a mile and an eighth on the inner turf course, the Pennine Ridge. When I saw Analyze Its name show up in the PPs, initially I was thrilled to take a shot against him with a horse like Catholic Boy, or if they chose to run Hawkish here, it sounds like Hawkish is going to go to the Penn Mile. You know, there are nice horses in this race, whether it is an Irish Territory. We know what Untamed Domain's capable of. But when you go back and watch the Transylvania from Analyze It, and you couple that with the way that he wrapped up his 2-year-old campaign in the Cecil B. DeMille out at Del Mar, this horse has shown different dimensions. He can win outright on the lead. He can win off of it. He can win on firm going. He can win on yielding going. He'll probably have a little bit of cut in the ground on Saturday afternoon. This, again, was one of those instances. Initially, I was licking my chops to try to go against Analyze It, but guess what? I think Chad Brown might have a special one on his hands. And also, the way this race sets up on paper, up the ante, down on the inside, likely going to go forward, and then I would imagine Analyze It sits just off. He's going to arguably work out the best trip. He's probably the best horse in the race, and usually when you pair those two things together, you have a short price that's going to be very, very tough to beat. I'm not going to try to beat the favorite. I'm going to go with Analyze It in the Pennine Ridge.
Let's throw up the field for the feature race at beautiful Belmont Park on Saturday. It's the Grade 3 $200,000 Pennine Ridge Stakes, going a mile and an eighth on the inner turf for 3-year-olds, prepping for the Belmont Derby later in the summer. For expanded stakes previews, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Before we get to the deserving odds-on favorite from the Chad Brown barn, the #4 Analyze It, Mike, let's talk about last year's runner-up in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. That's Untamed Domain. And we'll go back to that race right now. Another Pennine Ridge contender, Catholic Boy, is in this race. Good effort from Untamed Domain, who was a graded stakes winner as a 2-year-old. Let's talk about his 3-year-old campaign. A couple of wet turf courses, a dirt effort. Is he dirtied up leading up to this race?
Yeah, I mean, maybe in some ways he is. I don't want to say that he's, necessarily been unlucky this year. His first start off the layoff just felt like a race where they were maybe prepping him a little bit. The race didn't set up that well. These connections, West Point Thoroughbreds, they had some designs on trying to make him a dirt horse and perhaps getting him to the Kentucky Derby. That's all well and good. I think they were prepping him in his first start back. The dirt experiment did not work out in any way, shape, or form. And his most recent start on Derby weekend, I mean, I just thought he ran fine in that race. It was a race that set up really well for his running style. The pace was very solid in that race. It fell apart at the end. He came running late. He just couldn't get up in that race against Maraud, who we're going to see in the Penn Mile also on Saturday. This horse ran well in that race, though, and he's a huge contender in this race.
But the one they're all going to have to beat is the undefeated Analyze It, basically unchallenged. Let's go back to his most recent start at Keeneland, a race in which he humbled 3 next out winners, and he just takes no prisoners. I mean, he did this from off the pace over a wet turf course, off the layoff, from an outside post position, unfazed.
Yeah, I mean, so far, there's nothing that they can throw at this horse that he can't handle. We could have put up any one of the 3 replays of his first 3 starts, and it would have looked exactly like this. He is just dominating fields. This is a serious racer. He's got to go 9 furlongs on Saturday for the first time. He's got to do it against a couple of better horses that I think than the ones he's been facing. But so far, I mean, what is there to knock about this horse? He is a super impressive 3-year-old turf horse.
And he might end up controlling this pace on the lead, which is going to make it tough tough for my top selection. I have to analyze it heavily in any kind of multiple race wager, but I'm still intrigued by Catholic Boy, who started his career on the turf like a good thing last year for Jonathan Thomas. Let's go back to his second lifetime start in the With Anticipation Stakes at Saratoga. And I like the fact that he's in and among horses in traffic. This is a tough position for such an inexperienced horse, and he's going to come get Irish Territory, who's also in the Pennine Ridge. He ran well in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. We saw that race in Untamed Domains replay, and then he won the Remsen on the dirt, which kind of convinced his connections to go for the big money on the Triple Crown Trail, where he's back to the surface where we know he can fit, and that is on turf. Catholic Boy's got a little bit of tactical speed. I hope I'm not in chase mode. I'd love to have someone else do the dirty work against Analyze It, but I don't think we've heard the last of Catholic Boy. He supposedly bled in the Florida Derby, so maybe there's his excuse. I think he's got some class. He might make Analyze It work just a little bit in the Pennine Ridge Stakes. JK's Play of the Day segment focuses on a pick 3 wager at Penn National on Saturday afternoon, and then Timeform US's David Aragona takes a deeper dive into the Pennine Ridge. Let's go to those segments right now.
Hey everybody, welcome to JK's Play of the Day. We're going to go out to a race course we don't go to very much. Penn National has a bunch of great stakes races this weekend. We're going to play a pick 3 starting in race 7 with the Penn Oaks. I'm going to use 2 horses as A horses here. I'm going to use the entry of the 1 Classy Dancer and the 1A, The Way I Am. I'm going to use those horses equally with the 6. Good Things Take Time. Good Things Take Time ran well at the Appalachian last time against Rushing Fall. Was outside. We talk about the outside of the turf course not being ideal throughout the Keeneland meet. I'm going to use those two horses equally. Keep an eye out for the entries. If there's going to be a scratch there of the 1 or the 1A, I think both of them are extremely live. I don't care which one stays in. Hopefully they both stay in, and we'll try to survive this leg with those two horses, the 1 and the 6. Going on to the Pennsylvania Governor's Cup, the Turf Sprint. I thought 2 horses made a lot of sense here. Obviously, the 12, Pure Sensation, classy type, facing some horses that aren't as the horse she's usually facing. And then also the 10, Ray's Warrior. I thought Ray's Warrior, first time service last time down at Gulfstream Park, ran a really big figure, 1:16 time form. Forwardly placed in these 5 furlong turf sprints is always something I'm looking for. Jason Service is turning a turf sprint always include for me. If I see him in a turf sprint race, I always use Ray's Warrior, 10-1 the morning line. I'm not quite sure we'll get that, but all I'm going to use here is Ray's Warrior and Pure Sensation, the 10 and the 12. On to the 3-year-old feature of the day, the Grade 2 Penn Mile. These horses will be running for $500,000. It attracted a horse, some nice horses. Hawkish is cross-entered from what I hear on Thursday. This horse is likely going to run the Penn Mile. I'm going to use Hawkish as my lone A horse. That horse ran really big at Aqueduct last time in April with a 1:11 time form number. Got a great trip, but ran really well. I'm a huge fan of Manny Franco. I don't think anyone tries harder in this game than that young man, and I think that he'll definitely find a way to get the best trip possible. I'm going to use Hawkish as a single A horse here, but I'm also going to use Therapist for Christophe Clement as a lone B horse here as a saver. The horse ran a nice race down at Gulfstream earlier this spring. Gulfstream turf form is a little bit tricky. Sometimes it translates, sometimes it doesn't. But with that big number, Irad Ortiz sticks here. I don't know if that was a choice that Irad had between this one and Hawkish, but I still think Therapist is one that you definitely want to be aware of. But I like Hawkish as the lone A. I think the value here is beating the 3-horse Murad, who won on Derby Day. I think that horse probably moved up on the soft course with all the rain they were having. And I also think that horse was probably running on the best part of the turf course over Derby weekend. So that horse I'm going to try to fade based off of that performance. And hopefully there's some value built in to throwing out a Todd Pletcher that just won on Derby Day. We'll see you next week. Good luck.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Aragona for this week's Timeform US Spotlight. We're going to be taking a look at the feature race on Saturday at Belmont Park. It's the Grade 3 Pennine Ridge for 3-year-old turf horses going 1 1/8 miles. And this race features the best 3-year-old turf horse in the country, Analyze It. He's undefeated in 3 starts. He's going to be a heavy favorite in this race, and it's going to take pretty big effort to beat him. This is his prep, of course, for the Grade 1 Belmont Derby next month. So he'll be looking to prove that he can get the distance and continue on. He's the big favorite in this race, but there are some other talented horses in here. Let's start by taking a look at the Timeform US pace projector, and you'll see that number 4, Analyze It, is predicted to be well out in front in this race. He's just, set pretty legitimate fast paces in his prior races. He's certainly not a horse that needs the lead, but he appears to be faster than his rivals in this race. We'll see what we get from the number 1 horse, Up the Ante, who had been a closer in prior starts and tried out front-running tactics successfully last time. So he might be one that goes after Analyze It earlier, tries to take the lead from that horse and has Analyze It sit off him. But it seems like Analyze It will be able to dictate terms, whether he's on the front end or stalking the pace. Let's jump over to analyze its past performances. And if you look at his Timeform US speed figures, it's a rare situation where every Timeform US speed figure that this horse has earned is higher than every other turf number anybody in this field has ever recorded. So, even if his lowest number of a 115 is higher than the fastest numbers that anybody else in this field has run on the turf. So Analyze It just has a huge speed figure edge in this race. Watching his races, he's a horse who's just very visually impressive. He wins his races like he's got more left in the tank. He wins by large margins. He showed last time in the Transylvania that he's pretty versatile. He had been up on the lead in his prior 2 starts, but he had no problem stalking the pace last time. The pace of that race was actually pretty fast. A horse kind of ran off on the lead, and Analyze It did well to take the race over and continue to hold off the closers as the race sort of fell apart behind him. So he's a nice horse. I'm not really trying to beat him in this race. He's going to be awfully tough. He figures to work out a good trip, but there are some others to take a look at because there are other horses with speed in this or with ability in this race. Now, number 2, Hawkish, who we're not going to take a look at, he's expected to scratch out of this race and instead opt for the Penn Mile. So he would have been Analyzed its main challenger. So let's take a look at some of the others. The number 3 horse, Catholic Boy, he's going to attract some support in this race because he's one of those name horses. He was on the Derby Trail earlier this year. He obviously handles the dirt well, but he's a horse that done well on turf early in his career. He finished 4th in the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf last year after winning his first 2 starts on grass. The one thing about Catholic Boy, though, is he's a horse who's gotten very good trips in his turf races. Even going back to that Breeders' Cup effort when he was 4th, he got a perfect trip, just kind of sitting along the rail, saving ground the entire way. He followed Mendelssohn through that hole at the top of the stretch and ultimately just wasn't quite good enough. I think Catholic Boy would have to step forward on his prior turf form to really be a threat in this race. I actually prefer Untamed Domain, who finished ahead of Catholic Boy in that Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf last year, whereas Catholic Boy was the one saving ground that day. Untamed Domain kind of got this crazy wide trip where he had to go around the entire field coming to the top of the stretch. He finished very well that day to be 2nd. His 3-year-old season so far has been sort of a little inconsistent. He's got the season off to a disappointing start in the Dania Beach. They tried dirt. That didn't work out in the Tampa Bay Derby. They went back to turf last time in the American Turf at Churchill Downs. Now, obviously, the turf course had taken a ton of rain that day. That was Derby weekend. And it sort of looked like Untamed Domain really wasn't handling it for the first part of the race. He was kind of well back. He was wide, off the rail. You didn't want to be down inside that day at Churchill Downs. It never seemed like he was really doing that much running, but at the very end, the race kind of fell apart in the final 16th, and he was able to get up into 2nd place that day. I'm not sure what to make of that effort. I'm not sure what to make of his current form, even though he ran so well as a 2-year-old. And furthermore, he doesn't figure to get that much pace to close into in this race, so that's another concern for Untamed Domain. The horse that I think is actually going to be most dangerous for Analyze It in this race, and one that I'm going to try to use behind him in the exacta and a little bit underneath in trifectas, is the number 1 horse, Up the Ante. This is a horse who had some real excuses early in his career. His first start at Belmont, he just kind of got sandwiched in between horses coming around the far turn, was in an uncomfortable spot, ended up getting shuffled out of position. That race is not nearly as bad as it seems. His next race at Keeneland was better. Then they tried him on dirt in his first start as a 3-year-old. Finally, they got him back on turf last time at Belmont Park, and they tried out riding him more aggressively, sending him to the lead, and he responded beautifully. I mean, if you want to watch a visually impressive win, Joel Rosario just never even asked this horse to run late in the late stages of that race, and you don't often see front runners as the horses that run the fastest final quarter miles of turf races, but he just absolutely ran off from that field in a gallop. He could be vastly improved, and I'm thinking they might send him to the lead again in this race, or even just be sitting right behind Analyze It, and I think that pace advantage makes him dangerous. So I'm using him with Analyze It. He should be a decent price, Up the Ante, but Analyze It is going to be awfully tough to beat in Saturday's Pennine Ridge at Belmont. Now let's send it back to the studio.
Time for our best bet segment here on Out of the Gate. Our colleague Matt Bernier's got something at Santa Anita.
My best bet this week comes in the nightcap at Santa Anita on Saturday afternoon. Race number 10, optional claiming $40,000. Not winners of one other than going down the hill. A horse I've always had a little bit of an affinity for is the number 2, Hootie. Hootie goes out from Michael McCarthy and Drayden Van Dyke. Now, they're going to turn this horse all the way back from a 1.25 mile race to 6.5 going down the hill. We're going to take a look at his run 2 starts back. Basically, he spread-eagled the field going a 1.25 miles, and look at the fractions that he set. 46 and 2 for a half mile. You look at the Timeform US pace ratings, 154, 129, all of them color-coded red, and he just got a little bit tired at the end, and Saltini came and ran him down. I thought it was a really gutsy effort, and again, we always look for these sort of turnbacks. I know 10 to 6.5 is pretty substantial, but if he can be close in those races, or forwardly placed anyway, setting legitimate fractions, it at least makes me think that there's a scenario where he doesn't get outrun going down the hill. If he can stay relatively close to the front end, I think Hootie's going to have a chance here. He's going to be able to certainly stay out the distance. It's going to be more a matter of, does he get outrun early? He's 5-1 on the morning line. We'll give a look to the number 2, Hootie, in the nightcap at Santa Anita on Saturday.
Mike Beer, NYRA analyst. Nothing at Belmont but a New York horse at Penn National. You're trying to beat a big favorite.
Yeah, there's a very big favorite in this race in the way I am, and she's a really good horse. I just wanted to take a shot against her in this race for a couple of reasons. One, just because I feel like the horse that I'm going to make my best bet, Raucous, for Christophe Clement, I think she's pretty good and with a real chance to take a step forward in her second start as a 3-year-old. And I also just feel like in a 6-horse field, she might be 5th choice in this race. She might be a really square price. She's second-time Lasix for her second start as a 3-year-old. And it was just weird to me that they brought her back off the layoff sprinting 6 furlongs. I don't really feel like that's her distance. I think they might have been prepping her, and now they'll stretch her out for her second start back. Let's go back to her stakes win. Second time on turf last year as a 2-year-old. This is the Chelsea Flower Stakes at Aqueduct. Yes, she gets a good trip in this race, saving all the ground and then slipping through on the rail in the stretch. But I like that. I like the fact that she got through that position first of all, and then I like the way she finishes once she does get through, and she just runs away from this field at the end. This was a nice performance, and she backed this race up really well. They shipped her out to Del Mar for the Grade 3 Jimmy Durante. She ran really well in that race to be 3rd after making the lead in the stretch, and that was against a good field. I think she fits really well in here, and she just might be a square price.
I'll stay on the turf as well, but I'll go to Monmouth Park, race number 10. That's the $60,000 Tail of the Cat Stakes, and my top pick in here is the number 3 Gunnison. I just don't really like the favorites in here. Hazard for Todd Pletcher's making his turf debut. I don't know if he really likes this surface. Strike me down the number 7. He's 3-1 on the morning line. He's a turf maiden, 1 fast ride, 7-2 on the morning line. A horse that's been off the board in his last 2 starts. I know Gunnison likes turf, and I know he's sharp. Let's go back to his most recent start at Laurel. This was a decent non-winners of one other than against older horses, and Gunnison's just going to come on the outside and finish very determinedly to beat this field. You see the gray on the outside. That's the favorite, Enough is Enough, who was one of 2 horses to come out of that race to win their very next start. Gunnison still a little bit slow on paper, 76 Beyer speed figure, but he's so lightly raced. This is start number 7 that I think he's got some upside potential. He's got a little bit of tactical speed as well. He's won 2 out of his last 3 starts, and he's going to be a price in this race. 6-1 on the morning line for the number 3 Gunnison. That's my best bet at Monmouth, race number 10. We thank you for watching Out of the Gate this week, and we want to remind you to follow all of our offerings on Twitter. DRF TV's offerings can be found on Twitter at DRF Video, and for the latest news and notes from America's Turf Authority Daily Racing Form, follow on Twitter at DRF Inside Post. That's it for this week. Best of luck when your horses break. Out of the Gate.